Hey, good day, folks. Welcome to another episode of Andrew's Life. I hope everyone had a wonderful holiday. I can't complain. I'm alive. I'm healthy, and I'm grateful for that. I hope everybody is staying warm. I mean, even down here in Alabama, it's been abnormally cold. I mean, we've had temperatures as low as the teens, and and then a couple of days following that, the temperatures were in the 20s and 30s, and today the temperatures rose up into the mid 40s. So today was the warmest day we had in several days. So, anyways, uh, this video is going to be about real estate investing. Now, I've had a commenter on one of my other videos I've made. I forgot what video it was, but they wanted me to make a video about real estate investing, and I told this person that I would. Now, this video most likely is not going to be the type of video that the individual is looking for because it just isn't. I mean, so number one, no, I am not a licensed real estate agent. No, I am not a real estate investment guru. This video is strictly off of my personal experience when it comes to owning real estate. So basically, to put it in a nutshell, and I've kind of touched on this a little bit, I would say about a couple of months ago when I made that video sitting in my car of why I chose to go back and work a 9 to 5. I touched on this a little bit on that video when it comes to real estate. I mean, I told you on that, maybe it was on that video or it could have been on another video, but I think it was on that video about me going back and working a 9 to 5. But I believe on that video, I touched a little bit on real estate, and I told you guys I had a house that I was getting ready to sell, and at that time it was on the market. Well, fast forward to today. Fortunately, that house did sell, and I made a little bit of money off that transaction. Not much, but a little bit. I mean, I made a few $1,000s off that transaction, which, to be completely truthful, since I've only owned that house for a handful of months, I'm going to have to pay what they call uh, short term capital gain taxes on the money that I made off of that house, which is going to be the bad thing, to be quite frank. So, when it comes to real estate, here's a few things that I've encountered, which I believe many people who call themselves real estate gurus don't bother to discuss with their followers. And this is also something that many people, when going into real estate, don't bother to consider before getting into real estate. Now, number one, if you want to go into real estate investing, here's my advice: have very deep pockets. Now, as I've told you on that video that I made of why I was going back to a 9 to 5, I forgot exactly what that video was called, but I made that video, I want to say about 2 months ago. I posted that video in early October. But anyways, if you're going to buy real estate for investment purposes, my suggestion is to have really deep pockets. Now, when I say have deep pockets, I'm talking depending on what type of real estate like. If you're gonna purchase a house for, let's say, $100,000, I mean, I would suggest that number one, you pay for that house in cash, and I would also suggest that you have a minimum of an additional $20,000 for repairs that you might need to do, ongoing maintenance, and also when it comes, I mean, and also depending on what kind of investment you're going to do. Now, if you're going to buy a house, fix it up and flip it, that's one thing. Even if you're gonna buy a house and fix it up and flip it, still my suggestion would be to have some very deep pockets. And my suggestion would be is if you're wanting to flip a house, let's say you buy a house with 50,000 and you estimate, okay, you bought a house with 50. Let's say the house needs $50,000, give or take, worth of renovations and repairs. So now you got $100,000 on this house, and let's say you anticipate on making $50,000 off this house. My suggestion would be for this $50,000 house that you want to purchase. I mean, again, whenever you go into real estate investing, my suggestion is number one, do all your transactions in cash money. And when I say cash money, I'm talking no credit cards, no line of credit, no loans, none of that crap. Pay out of your own pocket. Whatever money you use to, all the way from the purchase of the piece of real estate itself to all the repairs that you make, to all the people that you pay to make the repairs, my suggestion is to pay cash. Other words, money that comes out of your personal bank account is the only money that ought to be used to do this whole project. And I can't emphasize enough, if you're going to go into that kind of stuff, have some very deep pockets. And I would say if you're going to buy a house for 50,000 and you're going to put 50 into it, and maybe you plan to sell it for, let's say, 150, 50 for the house, 50 to make repairs, that's $100,000. You think you can get 150. Now, for starters, my suggestion would be to have a minimum of $300,000 saved up, specifically for real estate projects. And of course, you need to have, and I would say, in addition to that, you need to have several months worth of money saved up for your regular bills. And I would also suggest that you have a retirement fund started with several thousands of dollars into your retirement. Preferably tens of thousands of dollars towards your retirement. Have all that squared away before you go into real estate. And if you're going to buy some real estate to rent out, and you're going to basically be a landlord, again, my suggestion would be to have some deep pockets. Like, let's say you buy a house for $100,000. It's turnkey move-in ready. It doesn't need any significant repairs at that particular time. My suggestion would be, if you're going to go that route, for every house that before you start buying houses, like if you buy one house for $100,000, my suggestion would be to have a minimum of $200,000 specifically for your landlord business. $100,000 for the house, and then the other $100,000 for, like if your tenant messes up something and you have to go and make repairs, ongoing maintenance, this little crap like that. And another thing that you need to consider if you're going to go into real estate investing is you got to take into consideration ongoing maintenance, ongoing repairs. And it's not going to be if repairs come up, it's going to be when repairs come up. Because if you're going to be a landlord, repairs will come up, guaranteed. And you also got to take into consideration your property taxes and the proper homeowner's insurance. And like I said before, your maintenance, your repairs, and if you're going to be a landlord, you got to also take into consideration that your tenants are not going to pay their rent like they're supposed to all the time. There's going to be times where your tenant decides for whatever reason that they're not going to pay you no more rent. Or if we get another situation like during the pandemic, where the government tells tenants that they do not have to pay rent, well, guess what? You get no, as a landlord, you get no rent money. And if you own this property and you're not getting no rent, then that means you're going to have to pay money out of your own pocket for all your repairs, all your property taxes, your regular ongoing maintenance. And if you do like most people do in real estate investing and you buy X amount of homes and you take out X amount of money in loans through the bank or a mortgage company, well, guess what? If something happens such as the pandemic of 2020, or if the economy takes a crap and a bunch of people lose their jobs, well, guess what? You're going to have a bunch of tenants that are not going to pay you your rent because either A, they're not going to have the money to pay your rent, or B, they might decide to take advantage of the situation and they'll use that as an excuse to not pay you your rent. So if you're on the hook to pay, let's say, a mortgage of $100,000 for your rental, you got your mortgage, you got your property taxes, you got your homeowner's insurance, you got ongoing repair and maintenance, and then there's still going to be a chance that the tenant will leave your property a mess. Like, you might, as a landlord, you're going to confront this individual and, hey man, where's my rent? Why haven't you paid your rent since X amount of time? And you got tenants out here that are very entitled and they're going to get upset that you're confronting them. So before they leave your property, they're going to tear it up. I've looked at houses before where the tenant took out the copper. They took out all the copper. They took out all the plumbing. And they scrapped it. And there's been situations I've seen to where you had tenants that were extremely vindictive. So they intentionally left on if the house has a second story, they may have intentionally left on the kitchen sink, or they left on the bathtub, or every area of the house that has a sink, they left on the water intentionally, knowing that most likely nobody would be able to go and turn any of that off because nobody would know that it was on in the first place. And then you might have somebody call you and tell you that your house is flooded and water is coming out the front door or something crazy like that. So then when you go over there to see what the situation is, well, guess what? Now you have a $50,000 repair on your hands. Now you might have a $50,000+ repair. Because now you got to go through and rip out all the drywall, rip out all the wood that may have already began to mold, and replace it all. You got to redo the flooring and a whole bunch of other stuff. All because the tenant was mad because you confronted them about paying rent. You wouldn't allow that individual to live in your home for free. Because, believe it or not, there are people out here that do not understand that landlords do not own these houses for free. The landlord had to pay for these houses in some way. And there's people out here that I don't know. They somehow think because you're a landlord, you're loaded with money. And therefore, you're supposed to allow people to live in your home for free because it's a human right, as many people will argue. But, anyways, that's the type of crap you deal with a lot of times as a landlord, especially if you're a landlord in lower income communities. Which, by the way, is the main reason why now that house I did a video on about a couple of months ago, which was up in Indiana. See, that video that you guys saw, that house, I was going to keep that house as a rental, but the reason why I didn't do it is because, as I told you before, my pockets are not deep enough for that type of, to do that type of stuff. And secondly, I did not want to deal with the caliber of people who were living in that particular neighborhood. Now, I'm still not going to tell you guys where that house is located. And I would say that the neighborhood was a C grade neighborhood. I mean, I would say that neighborhood was what somebody would consider maybe a C minus grade neighborhood. So it wasn't the ghetto, it was an okay area. But when I began to look around and I saw the caliber of people that I would most likely have to deal with, I didn't care for the people over there. I didn't want to deal with that caliber of people. And like I said a minute ago, my pockets just weren't deep enough to go into being a landlord. So those are the reasons why I decided to sell that house. Now, some of the money I got back from the sale of that house, I'm gonna put towards doing some traveling and to build this channel at the first of the year. So I'm gonna be making more videos talking more about that. So stay tuned for those videos. But and let me see here. But I would say for me, when it comes to buying and selling real estate in general, I'm not gonna sit here and tell you guys that yes, I made tons of money, because I truly didn't. I would say for the majority of my real estate transactions, I either broke even or I lost. Now there was one real estate transaction. No, there was two real estate transactions to where I actually lost. Now, the house that me and my older sister used to own in Cleveland, Ohio. See, when my sister passed away of cancer, no, well, yeah, of cancer, you know, the house just sat there for a while because at that point, I no longer wanted to be up in Cleveland, Ohio. I wanted to move around a little bit. Because around the time that she had cancer, my mom was, towards the end before she passed away, my mom was the one that was taking care of her. And around this time, I had accepted a job offer down in Kentucky. So I packed up some items and I left Ohio and I moved down to Kentucky. So making a long story short, after my oldest sister passed away in earlier 2004, I had no desire to keep that house. Now, between me and my sister and my parents as a family, we didn't spend a substantial amount of money fixing this house up to make it habitable. Because when we bought the house, it wasn't even habitable. The roof had a big hole in it. It needed, this was a duplex, So it needed 2 new furnaces, 2 new hot water heaters, and it needed some drywall work, and it needed new flooring. So, as a family, we spent a substantial amount of money, working on this house, getting it fixed up, making it habitable, making it look half decent, like human beings occupied it. So, the money that we spent getting this house fixed up versus the money that we got back after we chose to sell this house was a loss. Now, granted, I didn't lose the money by myself because it was my money, my sister's money, and my parents' money tied up into this particular home. So, as a family, we lost money. Now, the house I used to own up in Toledo, Ohio, and if you go back to one of my Toledo videos, I do drive by that house. I mean, it's a 2-story blue house. I drove by it before, so it's on one of my Toledo videos. But anyways, I lost money on that house too. Now I purchased that house during the last recession, the recession of the late 2000s. On that house, I lost a few $1,000s. And then I had a house in Anderson, Indiana. It was my personal home. And when I sold that house, again, I lost a little bit of money off of that house. I lost a few $1,000 off of that house. Now, the house I sold recently in Indiana, in fact, there were 2 houses I sold in Indiana recently, and I've gained money off of both of them. And when I say I made money, I'm talking in a tune of only a few $1,000s. Not enough for me to be rich. Not enough for me to not have to work ever again in my life. When I say I made money off of some of my houses, I'm talking I've only made a few $1,000s. And like I said a minute ago, there were some houses where I lost a few $1,000s. And then I had a couple of real estate transactions where I basically broke even. Like, for an example, I owned a house out in the country up in Indiana that I sold during the summer. And on that house, I basically broke even. So, to make a long story short, I did not make a lot of money in real estate, which is one of the big reasons why I personally will not be going into real estate investing. Because A, my pockets are not deep enough to withstand all the losses that are possible when you go into real estate investing. Because when you go into real estate investing, it is extremely easy to lose money. Another thing you gotta take into consideration when going into real estate investing is you also gotta take into consideration some of the laws of your state or some of the laws of your city or county. Now, I'm not trying to get into politics, but if you live in some of these areas that are more blue, some of those type of cities have ridiculous laws and concerns to the rights of a landlord when it comes to how a landlord chooses to run their business. I'll just leave it like that. So depending on where you live, you gotta take those type of things into consideration. And then of course, if you are a landlord, if someone calls you at 2 o'clock in the morning talking about their furnace doesn't work, their toilet is clogged up and now the water done overflowed and now it done flooded the bathroom. Well, guess what? Either A, you're going to be getting up at 2 o'clock in the morning to address that situation, because if you choose not to, then the tenant can get you for, I forget what they call it, but in certain states, the tenant will legally be able to withhold rent from you. And then rather than you getting the rent money, they would pay that money into some type of an escrow account. Or two, they can outright sue you until the judge, hey, listen, this house is not habitable. Just ridiculous stuff like that. Or two, you can always pay money. You can always pay some money out of your whatever you charge your tenant for rent. You can pay a percentage of that to a property management, which will be another expense that you would have to take into consideration if you want to be a landlord. So for me, when I calculate all the different expenses that are out there when it comes to being a landlord, and when I look at some of the challenges legally that one could run into when it comes to any type of real estate transaction, whether it be I'm a landlord or I'm just fixing and flipping. I mean, I'm gonna be honest. To me, it's just too much of a headache. I mean, I've purchased a house here in Alabama about a year ago. It was out in the country, and I fixed it up. I mean, I've hired outside contractors to do some of the work, but there was a bunch of that work I did myself. And that was I mean, honestly, time wise, things went pretty well. But at the same time, it was also a huge headache having to get all that shit stuff done. I mean, at this point in my life, I'm gonna be honest with you people. I have no desire to ever again renovate another house. Like the house I'm living in right now, which, you know, I will be making another video at some point explaining why I chose to stay here in Alabama as opposed to moving back up to Indiana. I'll make a video going elaborate more on that later, so stay tuned for that video. But the house I had out in the country, I sold it. I sold it back in the late part of this past summer. And on that house, that was one of the houses that I broke even on. I was going to say something here. But yeah, anyhow, I bought that house, and again, it was inhabitable. It needed a crap ton of work. And on that house, I had to hire professional mold removal people because this house was a mold fest, basically. So yeah, I have no desire to ever again have to renovate another home. And I really don't have any desire to deal with people, especially people that don't want to pay their rent like they're supposed to. Which are more reasons why I decided to not keep that house up in Indiana. I chose to sell it for for those reasons. I just have no desire to be a real estate investor of any type. I'm not trying to do no fixing or flipping. Either I'm trying to be a landlord, and then I gotta deal with incompetent property management teams. I gotta deal with tenants that don't want to pay their rent because of some bullshit. I just ain't got time for it. I mean, and the money that some people swear up and down they've made being a landlord or being a real estate investor, I would say out of 100 people that tell you they made substantial amounts of money, there's probably only 5 of them that really made that kind of money. The rest of the other 95 people probably are lying to you. Or two, they may have made the money, but what they're not telling you is the amount of money that they've had to spend to make that money, the amount of debt that the majority of these investors had to take on to do what they do. That's what they're not telling you. Because the majority of your real estate investors slash landlords do not purchase their homes and pay cash. They take out loans. And then when a pandemic comes, a lot of these investors get their asses handed to them and they lose all their shit because what do you know? Their tenants don't pay rent because the government told them that they didn't have to. So guess what? They lose their crap. Or two, the economy takes a crap and they lose their crap in that manner. Because again, people don't got money. If people don't got money because they lost their job, guess what? The landlord won't get their rent. So that's pretty much how that goes. Which is why I suggest if you're going to go into real estate, investing of any type, have deep pockets. Don't go into real estate broke. Don't be an idiot. Have deep pockets. I can't emphasize that enough. And I can't think of anything else to say to add to this video. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this off. Hopefully you guys got something out of it. And again, thanks for watching another video. Until next time, everyone, have a blessed one. And I will see you on the next one.